This is NCC Unplugged.
Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of NCC Unplugged. My name is Matt, and I'm hosting today's episode. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day, out of your week to listen to a little bit of what we have to say. Before we get into today's show, though, if you could subscribe, leave a review on whatever platform you're listening to us on. That really goes a long way to helping get the word out about NCC Unplugged, and it just opens it up to more and more people to hear, kind of what we have to say, spread the gospel whenever we talk about such things. So do that, please. On today's show, I'm joined by our youth minister, Jonathan Slatt.
Hello.
And you're still in the youth group, right?
Technically, yeah.
For another couple months. We're joined by Adam Wilson.
Hello.
He was on one of the earlier episodes talking about CIY, so I want to thank you for joining us once again. So on today's episode, we just kind of wanted to have a chat with each other and kind of wanted to pick Jonathan's brain on, as the youth minister, kind of what you see the youth of today, what they're dealing with, just in life in general. We know a lot of stuff changed coming out of COVID, and Adam, you've kind of grown up in the youth group from COVID, the COVID era until now. So yeah, we're just gonna kind of look into that, look and see what the youth of today, the students, are dealing with, and kind of see how, as parents or as congregation members at a church, how we can help support them along the way. So, Jonathan, kind of based on that, like what are you seeing? I guess both positives and negatives. What are you seeing with your students?
Yeah, well, my students are not normal high schoolers, for sure. I tell them that all the time, right? They're not normal people. No, but our youth group is great. They're so strong in their faith, and I think their age is a superpower. Like, just the fact that that you guys can say that you follow Jesus in high school is a huge testament to your dedication to him. Like, I truly believe high school is like one of the most hostile environments for your faith. Like, sure. I mean, I went to a Christian college, so maybe I don't have a great perspective there, but like, I just think that's one of the like harshest environments. But so I'm also Gen Z. I think it's cool that I get to be the same generation as the students. Yeah. I want to make that clear.
You're not a millennial like me.
No, yeah. I'm not a millennial. No. But so when I started, it was 2021. So it was like right after COVID. Mm-hmm. So I was 21 and all like the oldest students were 18. So there's only a 3-year difference. Even now there's only like a 6-year difference between us, which right now is like a lot, but in 10 years, it's like
not that much.
It won't be.
So, I actually have my first Gen Alpha. They're the upcoming 7th graders. So the first time it's not my generation.
Yeah.
But all that to say, I think one of the biggest things I saw coming out of COVID, because that's just a huge marker in their lives. It's like they were forced to, from my perspective, become apathetic about a lot of things that high schoolers are supposed to care about.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
So here's what I mean. Like all these things, right, that you look forward to in high school: prom, homecoming, these, your sports, and all the things that like characterize a high school experience, your social activities, your clubs. I think the high schoolers that were in the thick of COVID, like when everything was shut down, especially like that class of 2020, were then all of it was taken away, right? Graduation was taken away. Prom was taken away. It was gone. So they kind of had a choice whether to get depressed about that and miss those things and become upset about it, which I'm sure some people did. I mean, I was upset. I was in college in 2020. There were things I couldn't do. Or you have to say like, well, I don't care about it and let it go. So I think they were forced to like kind of pseudo mature.
Okay.
In a sense that, they're looking beyond high school things, because it's like, well, I can't care about prom because I don't have it, and who cares about graduation because I don't get to go. And I think that bled into a lot of different areas. And there was just kind of like an early cynicism that came with that class. And I don't say this negatively. It's just a matter of fact what I saw. So no, they're much more focused on like, where am I going to go to college? You know, what am I going to do? And less focused on those more high school
kind of the
type
here
things.
and now.
Yeah.
What they're, yeah. Okay.
Right. It forced them to let go of a lot of things earlier than most people have to.
Okay.
Which can be upsetting.
Sure.
For someone, you know, like things that you're supposed to enjoy being swept out from under you. And then there's kind of like that underlying cynicism of, well, like, why should I care about anything? Because it can be taken away.
Sure.
Which there's truth to.
Yeah. I know as an adult, I got to a point with it where, you know, I was having those thoughts.
Yeah.
And yeah. So Adam, kind of speak to that. I mean, again, you were a freshman whenever COVID happened and everything. So as we kind of travel back in time and look at COVID right now and how it kind of like shaped you and your experience in high school, is there anything specifically that stands out to you, kind of touching on what Jonathan just talked about? Or
for me, something that I've seen in myself and in my classmates is for that first like year of high school, we were all wearing masks in the building. You rarely saw your friends. We did a hybrid thing where half of the school would be in on for 2 days and half of the school would be in for the other 2 days. So there were large amounts of people that I barely even knew my first year in high school that I just started to get to know in the last couple of years. And I think that like that put up a barrier between a lot of people, and it also made it more difficult for people to reach out and make friends.
Yeah,
it really did. And it forced, I don't know if it forced, but it made online interactions much more appealing than going up to people that already had a whole group of people from the previous year and going up and meeting new people. So I've definitely seen that, like, where there's still like divides in people up until graduation.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's one thing that a lot of people don't necessarily think about. You're glad it was there at the time, the whole online interaction, right? Because we need interaction and community. So that was the only way we could do it at that time. So we're glad it was there.
Yeah.
But looking back, I don't think people realized how it was going to shape future things and the lasting effects of it.
Yeah.
I know dealing with my son who was in elementary school, he's in middle school now, like, you know, he was brought up essentially on the online school, you know, Zoom or Google Classrooms and everything. And I just noticed with him now, he's more, you know, obviously he has his buddies here at church and loves hanging out with them and stuff, but there's more of a, online, like I'm hanging out with my friends online. And us old people, we're like, you're not hanging out with your friends.
Right.
You know,
that's a computer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I think it was like when we talk about, you know, now with Zoom calls and cyber school and things like that, I don't think that affects you socially as much anymore because the chances are back to be social outside of those things.
Sure.
During the whole, you know, Zoom only thing, right? Body language accounts for like more than half of your communication.
Right.
There's really no situation where you're talking to somebody and you can see their chest up and like you can't see their, like, look, we're all talking with our hands right now, like, and nodding and you can't over a call, you can't affirm as people talk like that.
Sure. Yeah.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
And there's also no other situation where you can see yourself as you're talking to somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just all these minute things that, like, when that becomes your only social interaction, it's damaging.
Yeah.
For sure. It's not like what's the word? Starts with an R. Whatever. Unfixable.
Reversible.
Irreversible. Irreprehensible.
No, that's I don't know,
man.
But
if I was Garrett, I would know.
Yeah, Garrett would know.
Garrett would know. But
he
it can't
tell us the Greek and the Latin.
Yes.
Okay. But anyways,
exactly. But your mind is so flexible that it can be fixed. It's just
neuroplasticity.
Exactly.
Yes. Exactly.
Yep.
Brain.
Yeah.
Brain. Yeah. When all spells is just brain.
Yeah. But
yeah, for sure. So kind of leaving the COVID era behind if we can for now. I'm
Thank
sure
goodness.
we all just want to get that out of our minds and everything. So Jonathan, what do you see as the current youth minister of the church here? What do you see things that kids are dealing with on a day-to-day basis? And are they some things that you remember dealing with, or does it seem like it's a whole new crop of issues? Because that's one thing. As you get older, you look back at the time when you were a kid growing up, and you always think like, oh, those were the days, right? Like for me, the 80s, like, oh, the 80s were perfect. Well, if you really look back, the 80s weren't perfect, right?
Adam might actually agree with you.
Okay.
Do you like 80s music?
I like 80s music.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
But do you understand what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
we kind of look back with nostalgia of the time that we were brought up in, and we may not really take a deep dive into what's really going on. So what do you see going on with today's youth and what they're dealing with?
Yeah. I think there's degrees of things that are the same, and I think they'll always be the same. And there's things that are different.
Okay.
I mean, I think like Solomon hit the nail on the head in Ecclesiastes. He talks about there's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
I mean, like I go to the mall and I see the same like cliques of high schoolers.
Sure.
And I'm like, I know you. I don't know you, but I knew you. Like it's the same, you dress the same, act the same. So there's degrees of that where there's always going to be cliques. I mean, there's always going to be the struggle for popularity, for status, things like that.
Right.
It'll look different, but that stuff like that is always there. I think that's just human stuff.
Right.
When it comes to more like social issues or things like that, from what I can tell, being now removed from high school for 5 or 6 years, it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, gender identity and sexuality remains pretty prevalent, but differently. I think when I was in high school, it was still more controversial, and now it's more accepted.
Okay.
Which makes it difficult for you guys?
Yeah, it's definitely not like pressured onto people as much as I think that like it may look like it is, but it's not like looked over or anything. It's still like put out there, and people are still very like, I don't know, they're very for it.
Okay. Right.
Yes. Yeah, like I think when I was in high school, the movement was more like, which side are you on? And now the movement seems to be more like you're either an ally or you're closed-minded, sort of thing. Yeah. Like I don't know if ally was a very common term when I was in high school. Yeah.
Definitely for me, it was not.
Yeah.
Like, that, like, everything. And I feel like I wasn't in high school that long ago. It was 24 years ago when I graduated.
I'm 24 years old.
Yeah. So, jeez. Yeah. Okay, we're going to end this podcast. I feel really old now. But yeah, keep on going on.
No, yeah. So that's a huge one. I think race has become a huge thing, and I don't. It's bigger than I thought it would be at this point in our like human history.
Okay.
Like I think with Black Lives Matter and those situations that came up, I think race is still a very sensitive topic. I don't know what it looks like in high school, but
so it's almost like it's almost like a trap where if you try to acknowledge somebody's race, then people will point it out and say, why are you treating somebody differently? But if you not ignore them, but like just look over them, somebody as like just your buddy, your like normal friend, then people will say, why aren't you treating them differently? So it's almost like a trap.
yeah.
When all you really have to do is be friends with people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah. Love them like Jesus did, for sure. Yeah, but that's definitely a sensitive one. I think I've noticed for older Gen Z, like now we're out of college and that sort of thing, abortion has kind of is a hot one. With Roe v. Wade being overturned and everything. Right. It seems like that conversation is opening back up. I don't know how much it opens up in the high schools. Seems like more of a post-high school thing.
It's normally just avoided.
Okay.
Honestly. Yeah.
But it's still like a sensitive issue then.
It's avoided because people have very strong opinions about it.
Okay.
And they don't wanna
On
get
either side.
in
Yeah.
arguments. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I appreciate your perspective on that. We should talk more about this for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think those would probably be the biggest three.
Yeah.
Gender identity, racial sensitivity, and abortion.
Okay. All right. All right. And I know for me, like, again, you made reference to the Bible scripture and Solomon. There's nothing new under the sun, right? It's all there. It's all been done before. But I think nowadays the ease of it being able to be done is glaring to me anyways. You just look at technology and, you know, everybody has a voice that can be heard, whether good or bad. We were just talking, me and my wife were talking about that yesterday about, you know, somebody ask a simple question on Facebook, like what time does, you know, this store open? And then like, there's just a chain of like, why would you go there? This is terrible. This is blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Where like, if you were in a normal conversation with somebody like, hey, Jonathan, what time does the supermarket open? 8. Okay, great. And then you move on with your day. I'm not going to ask, you know, 30 other people and want their opinion as well. So the prevalence of technology, everybody feeling like they have a voice that needs to be heard, right? I mean, it's kind of funny. We're on a podcast right now. Our voices are being heard. Very meta.
Yeah.
But also, you know, everybody nowadays carrying phones in our pockets. And I'm really into, I look a lot of the neuroscience on how phones and screen time affect kids, affect adults, affect us all, right? And going back to COVID, I feel like, yeah, that stuff was there before, but then it became way more acceptable because that's how we had to do things. And now, you know, try to go somewhere without having your phone on you. Like I know me personally, there's been times where like my phone's setting aside, I'll go up to go into the other room for literally like to get a drink of water. And I'll be like, oh, I forgot my phone. I'll grab my phone.
Gotta have it.
I'm not doing anything with it. I need to have it, you know? And the ease of access of everything on our phones. I am so thankful smartphones weren't a thing when I was in high school.
Yeah.
I would have gotten in a lot of trouble, and I was a good kid too. Like I was terrified of my parents.
Yeah.
Like I was a good kid. But Adam, do you see that being and I know every family is going to be different with their rules and everything with cell phones. So I'm not sure where you're at with that or.
Yeah. So even like, I'm not saying like my parents are incredibly strict, but with parents who will tell me when I've been spending too much time on my phone, it's even then it's still difficult to not, like you said, walk around the house with my phone. I could be doing the dishes and my phone's in my pocket, which like you've said that and I just realized that I do that,
right?
And how strange that is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's almost subconscious at this point.
Yeah.
Where it's just like something that you're used to having all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
It's huge. I think it contributes to anxiety.
Yep. Big time.
Yeah. And I think it would be irresponsible to talk about issues with Gen Z and not bring up anxiety and depression. Like it's just,
Yeah.
I think being so connected all the time gives you guys a lot of pressure to like keep up with everything and stay connected with everybody. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was going to be that's a good segue into my next question. Is we do see a rise of anxiety and depression in the youth today, and I always wonder, and kind of because you have a psychology background as well, I always wonder is it that it's worse with this generation, or is it that we're just more mindful of it and aware of it? So has it always been there and we just like, oh, toughen up, kid, you'll be fine. And then that kid had to figure out how to handle it themselves. Or is it, in your opinion, is it legitimately something that you personally doing what you do, you see on the rise?
That's a great question. And it's like something I wish I had read more literature on. So I might, you can always do that. But the literature on that is tough because it's like anytime you look at statistics or evidence in that manner, like you only have what's recorded, right? And there's a lot of nuances with anxiety that aren't recorded. Just like anytime you toughen up, kid, like we don't know how many times that was said or when, what context, I think it's probably a combination of both. I think there's not more to be stressed about. We're more aware of things that stress us out now, where, when you weren't connected 24/7 to everything, it was so much easier to focus on what's directly in front of you.
Yeah. And know what's going on in your bubble. And that was it.
Yeah. Right. And I've experienced that in times I've done I try to get my screen time down to less than 30 minutes a day. It's like I leave my phone away. It's like, yeah, I got like stuff done around the house. Like it was awesome. I could focus.
Yeah.
So I think you're seeing everybody, right? Especially on social media. You're seeing all these people that it's like, oh, they're in this honors class. They're going to this college. They already have this planned out. It's like, I don't even know what I want to do. Like, I got to hurry up and figure it out. It's like, you don't. You know, you're a junior in high school. You're a senior in high school. Take it slow. You know, be prayerful. Seek counsel of your parents and teachers that you trust, right? And take your time in making these decisions. You don't have to rush through it. And I don't know if anyone outright says you have to rush through it, but the comparison game of this person's doing this, this person's doing that is always going to motivate you, for better or worse, to do what they're doing.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. And that's a very good point too about, you know, what you were just saying about having access to know everything that's going on, even if it doesn't affect you.
Right.
Right. I mean, you know, wars going on the other side of the world. Yes, we want to be praying for those people. We, you know, our hearts break for both sides because people are dying, you know, like these are people that God created and they're losing their lives. But we can also get like way caught up in it and have that kind of dictate our daily lives as well. And that's a dangerous thing to just be thinking about all the time.
Right.
You know, I know in my family, my parents have always said, you know, you see like a rally, an anti-abortion rally or whatever. And my dad specifically has always been like, I'm going to start with my family and make sure I teach them why this is wrong or why, you know, the Bible says this. And then as I teach my kids, it's up to them to teach their kids.
Right.
And then them to teach in your sphere of influence and everything.
Right.
And he was always on the mindset that's going to reach more people than standing on your bully pulpit and just yelling at people. So Adam, kind of the and you don't have to get into like deep detail if you don't want to or anything like that, but you are on a couch with a psychologist though. So
I'm a psychologist. Yeah.
Oh, man.
I need about 8 more years of schooling.
Yeah,
to be a
right.
psychologist.
But I mean, what the things that we've talked about as the two older guys here in the room, like, are those legit things that you've dealt with personally? Are there other things that you see kids today dealing with that we haven't touched on? And
so the things you've already talked about 100%, the pressure to like compare yourself to other people. And no matter what stage of high school or life you're even in, you're always looking at what other people are doing and seeing how you compare to that. And that's always a big struggle. But that's cool. That's the biggest thing that I've seen.
So let me ask you this, and apologize for cutting you off.
No.
So like for me, growing up, growing up, like, you know, drugs, alcohol, sex were like the big like 3 that we were always being pressured with, or you were being told like this is what you're going to be pressured with. And I don't know if it was just the friends I hung out with or what, but it wasn't necessarily thrown in my face or as big of a thing as, you know, people said, oh, you're going to have to deal with this. How are you going to react and everything? Is that kids these days, are you all dealing with, you know, the same pressures, drugs, sex, smoking, alcohol?
I think those still very much exist. And like you said, how it might have just depended on the people that you hung out with. That's 100% the reason. The people who you spend your time around with and the habits that they have are going to be the habits that you have. So it's like, for me, I've had to get out of relationships whenever things like those would be brought up.
Right.
That's how I dealt with it, was to leave.
Right.
And while I may have been able to try to help those people instead of just leaving, then so it's just trying to figure out what you do in those situations actually is important, but it doesn't come up as much if you don't spend your time around people who are doing those kinds of things.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
And we'll talk in youth group a lot too about, you know, how do you find the balance of being friends with people that don't love Jesus so that you can help them love Jesus versus not being around people that are going to drag you away from him. And I think what we kind of land on and try to explain is the people that are in your closest sphere need to love Jesus.
Right.
might not be a popular thing, but it's true. You know, if you've got people pouring into your life that don't follow Jesus, you're going to be dragged away one way or another. But you still have those other relationships where, you want to live in a way that they can see Jesus, but the people that you're going to trust and confide in and grow with are going to have to be people that love Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great point. And I know looking back in my life too, because I had my church friends and I had my school friends, and I thinking about this can look back and say, when I was with my church friends, it was easy. We just got to like enjoy being kids and like having a youth and enjoy doing things, where when I was with my school friends, and I didn't hang out with like terrible kids or anything, but it seemed like the ones that didn't have Christ as their center, I was always having to be on guard because I didn't want to fall victim to that. And it wasn't as enjoyable of a time hanging out with them. So yeah, I try to teach our kids the best we can. Just like your inner friend group is so important. You need to have that personal relationship with Jesus, and then hopefully that permeates to the closest group of friends that you have, so that you can all feed off of each other. Because at the end of the day, we're all human. We all have our struggles, and we all sin, and we need to be there to rely on each other, for sure. So,
yeah. And I think the most difficult thing, at least in my experience and with some of the people I know, is the problem is when it's not shoved in your face and you don't notice it at first. When it's like a subtle temptation.
Yeah.
That's when it can really become a problem.
Yeah, for sure. And isn't that funny how Satan works in that way? And I always say, on other podcasts I've done before too, like I sometimes think we forget that we talk about Jesus as God and we talk about Satan, but sometimes I think we forget that Satan is a being that is actively trying to get us.
Yeah.
And he is not always going to be there, the red tail and the horns saying, hey, do this, because most of us, we're smarter than that. We're not going to do it. But the sly ways that he can get us to justify things in our minds and everything, and he knows our weaknesses. So that's a very good point, though.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So in closing, Jonathan, as maybe a lot of parents are listening to this, and we've kind of talked about, a lot of the negatives and what we see kids dealing with today. Do you have any hope for the parents that are listening out there from what you see maybe speak to the youth here at church, and just kind of what you see?
Yeah, I definitely have hope for sure.
Yeah.
I have hope that God is always working. God's Spirit is powerful, and he's going to work to those that welcome that, right? And who let them direct the Spirit, who let the Spirit direct them to the things of God. Like there's hope. I think all the things we've talked about, anxiety, gender identity, abortion, racial issues, we've talked about drinking and sex and all these things, right? I think a lot of them, if not all of them, come down to this core issue for the current generation, which is identity. Who am I, and what do I do? What do I deserve because of this? What do I not deserve? Who am I supposed to follow? Who am I? So I think helping our students understand that they can find their identity in something that won't be taken away and can't be taken away, in Jesus. And being honest and saying, like, yeah, these things can fall away. And like, as adults we'll say, like, you can lose your house, you can lose your job, we could lose freedom in our country. I pray that we won't, but it's realistic. Even the things that are so ingrained in our lives can be taken away, but Jesus never can. So helping them find their identity in Christ and seeing themselves as I've been created and I have a purpose and I'm loved and that. And I think our group sees that. This past CIY has been super encouraging. Just so much spiritual depth in the students. And like I said at the beginning, they're not normal high schoolers. Right? And I tell them that all the time. Like, normal high schoolers don't pray with each other when they need prayer. Right? Normal high schoolers aren't spending time to help build each other up. Normal high schoolers aren't, working hard to help their friends know Jesus. And I see it in our group, and I just see such a fire in them and such a foundation of Jesus. And
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome.
Yeah,
it speaks for itself when you see them, the way they talk and act and live. It's incredible.
Yep. No, those are all great things. Adam, do you have any words of wisdom as we close out this episode?
Never hurts to invite somebody to a church event.
There you go.
That's the best advice I've ever heard.
Yeah.
In terms of bringing people.
Right. And that's a very good, easy access point, onboarding point, if you will. Sometimes it's hard to get people to step through the doors of a church on a Sunday morning, but if it's a youth event or something, just invite them, right? That could plant that seed for sure. So one thing I want to end on too, and you kind of touched on this just a second ago, Jonathan, is when people are looking for identity, and you said, we are created by the Creator. And one thing I always tell my kids, and I think this rings true for all of us, when you're feeling like you've lost your way, or you have no identity, or what do I believe, or out of everybody in the world, like God chose to create Jonathan Slatt. God chose to create Adam Wilson. Like God chose to take the time to create you. If you're listening or watching, he took the time to make you. There is a purpose for your life. There's a purpose for all of our lives, because the Creator made you. So, if you're dealing or struggling with that today, I just pray that, you could come to us as a church, come to a friend who's out there that may be able to help you. But yeah, just know that you are important, and you're created by the Creator. And I just want to thank you guys for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Another episode of NCC Unplugged. Until next time, thanks again.
Thank you for tuning into NCC Unplugged. If you've enjoyed our podcast, please be sure to rate and review it and share it with your friends and family. If you are interested in learning more about Norwin Christian Church, visit our website at norwinchristianchurch.com. We also invite you to join us at NCC for one of our 3 services. Sundays at 8:45 and 10:30 a.m., and Thursdays, starting September 5th, at 7 p.m. We have engaging classes for all ages, ensuring there is something meaningful for everyone in our church community. Thanks once again for listening, and we hope you have a great week.